What is the best company according to Warren Buffett? Do you know how hard the silent game is, Bo?
It's my favorite part is watching, because here's what's so funny. People in here are like, guys, you're late. Where are you at? Why are you waiting? And we're like, well, we're waiting because Reeby told us we got to wait. We got to sit here in silence for like 20 seconds, trying not to cough, which you failed at miserably. And then, oh, man.
So here's how we brought you in this morning. We said, what is the most valuable company according to Warren Buffett? Mm-hmm. Well, a few of you have already thrown it out there, but that's just the hook. That's not really what we want to talk about with this, because there's such a different angle that I think the Money Guy perspective will bring it full circle. And the fact that, of course, the answer is Apple. Warren Buffett loves him some Apple computer. But I thought that this story actually had a lot more meat in some other ways. And the fact that, let me explain. We all have friends, family, co-workers, that if you are an Apple iPhone user, you send them a text, and then when you get a response and it comes back in a green box,
it's a green
ball.
Oh
my goodness.
You're ready to throw your phone out the window.
They freaking are Android users. So they, because here's the problem for all you Android users. If you don't use iMessage, we can't name text chains. So if you have like a whole text chain for your office with like 6 people on it, you can't rename it. You can't mute the notifications. You're just kind of stuck. You're captive. So we pick on this a lot. So here's where I'm going with this. Warren Buffett, I just have this feeling, especially in COVID-19 times, that you have a group of billionaires that they're all in a text chain together. They're all on a group text chain with each other, talking about,
Do you know how badly I want to be on that thread with those billionaires?
They're all talking about their bunkers in Wyoming and all the other stuff. But here's the part that I think is interesting. Back in 2018, Tim Cook, the CEO for Apple, said, hey, I would personally be Warren Buffett's IT consultant, meaning that I would jump on an airplane, go to Omaha, and get him technical support if he'd just be willing to switch to Apple products.
That's a pretty solid offer. And
look, Warren it's no secret, because with that headline, this is unfathomable. When you look at the 2019 Berkshire Hathaway holdings, letter to shareholders, he posts this. Berkshire Hathaway owned at the time, now I'm sure it's down now, but at the time he owned close to $74 billion, that's with a B, of Apple. It's their third biggest holdings after, I believe, railroad and insurance.
Sure.
So pretty incredible. And by the way, if you're wondering, yes, that has doubled. His actual investment is around $35 billion, so he's done very well. And it also is one of those things, like I was like, I want to make sure I give him good context. There was a huge headline that says, Warren Buffett dumped $800 million worth of Apple stock. And if you read that, you're like, oh my God, he dumped $800 million. But the reality of the situation is, it's kind of like a rebalance. It's a rebalance. $800 million is a lot to me and you. To Berkshire Hathaway, that's a
Not
rebalance.
So
but here's the story. This got lost because we've all been struggling through this pandemic and so forth. Late February, it was announced Warren Buffett, at the age of 89 years of age, now has an iPhone. He got rid of his flip phone. He now has an iPhone. So I'm sure when Tim Cook and him trade texts back and forth, Tim is like, blue box. Finally, I got him blue box. So that's what we wanted to share, guys. It's just one of those things where I thought it was kind of interesting. We all could be entertained, and noticing the perspective of somebody who has $74 billion invested in a company and finally switch to the product is pretty incredible.
So I'd like to make a statement here. Warren, if you're out there listening to the Money Guy Show, look, I know you've had the investing thing down, but if you decide that you need some help with financial planning and keeping your financial house in order,
I see where he's going,
and you decide to hire a financial advisor, I want you to know that Brian and I will personally serve as your financial advisor. Just have your people get in touch with our people, and we'll talk.
Look, he can do the portfolio type stuff. We'll just be the sounding
board
for
him. The investments for
sure.
But
we want to talk about property and casualty insurance, trust, everything.
Estate documents.
We're going to hook you up, Uncle Warren. You just let us know.
Awesome. Guys, thank y'all so much for joining with us this morning. We're going to do some Q&As. We're going to answer your questions, so make sure in the live chat, just get them in there. We've got Austin sending them our way right now, so get those questions coming, and we're going to dive right in. Okay, here's one from Andrew to start us off. And this is what Andrew said. He said, hey, should I continue putting in my emergency fund and not worry about my debt? I work in the unstable oil industry. how much of an emergency fund should I have before beginning to pay off? And he wrote, all of my debt.
Well, that's such a hard, and look, I know we bring up Respect the Food, the financial order of operations all the time, and more to come on that later. We're going to have resources for days for you guys so that you can understand that. But right now, you still can go out there and look in our archives, look up financial order of operations, because I will tell you, especially in a rocky industry, I mean, think about it. We just had a huge oil battle where Russia and Saudi Arabia went at each other, drove the price of oil down to the point, our energy as a whole. When we did our quarterly report update, I mean, it was close to being down 50%, the entire sector.
The whole
so if you're in a sector, if you work in a sector that is down 50%, that is really scary stuff. So I do think cash is going to be very powerful to make sure you can cover any bad periods or any turbulence in the weather that's coming your way of financial living. So, but that's a very simple answer to a complex question, because I think that's why you got to go to a financial order of operations, is because once you figure out how much gives you comfort, then you can need to separate how the debt is. Because we've got a credit card debt. That's a lot different than mortgage debt. That's a lot different than low interest auto debt, and of course student loan debt sitting out there. So there's a lot of different things. Bo, did you want to actually give him kind of a Cliff Notes version of an answer?
No, I was going to say that's actually perfect. I think you emergency reserves first, and then you go get any free money available to you, whether that be employer match, or even if your employer perhaps puts money into your health savings account, that's another great option. Yep. And then you want to tackle your high interest debt, just like you said, credit cards, that sort of thing. Student loans, auto debt, again, we have tons of shows to go through that. But the one that I would be careful about, and we talk about this all the time, is if you do have low interest debt on an asset like a home and you're young. So some people like to really prioritize, I want to get out of debt, get out of debt, get out of debt. I would encourage you to think about the power of your army of dollar bills, because for young folks, and I'm going to say young is anyone under 46, anyone under 46.
I appreciate you taking it up a year just to keep me in. So he means 45.
If you're 45 or under, you really may want to consider, might I be better served putting soldiers in my army of dollar bills to work as opposed to going and satisfy really low interest debt? Weigh those two options and determine which part of the foo makes the most sense in your circumstance.
I do want to, because I completely agree with you, but I do want to throw in, because we had one of our clients, Money Guy clients, reach out, and Jason shared that he was like in some forum, and a gentleman had student loan debt that was double digits. Mm-hmm. What was the other? It was like credit card debt,
yeah.
But all the debt was double digits, to the point that Jason shared it with us, and was like, man, I'm going to have nightmares about this. And we're kind of the same way in the fact that I do think when you're in a situation where you have bad debt that's double digits and you have your cash is paying practically nothing, be realistic on how big that cash reserves needs to be, because you need to kind of be really good at honing in what that number is, so that you're not, the opportunity cost on double-digit interest debt is horrible against you, and that's the credit card debt. That's why we put it right after $1,000, after free money from your employer. It's right up there at the top.
This next question, this is from Faceless Man, and this is kind of in the same vein, but it's a little bit different. It says, how would you recommend someone's investment strategy change if they get laid off during this time? So I want to pause, and that's like awfully unfortunate. That's not an ideal circumstance to be in. But I would want you to think about this. If you've done the things that you've supposed to have done, you have an appropriate emergency fund in place, the 3 to 6 months, and the way that you decided on that was, how quickly can I find new employment? How quickly can I get a new job? If you have the cash to cover you until you're able to procure new employment, I would make the argument that you probably don't need to change your investment strategy at all, because again, your investment plan is part of your greater financial plan, and if you've already covered that short-term contingency, you shouldn't have to make any adjustments. That's the reason that you have the emergency fund in there. Now, this is one thing that we've seen a few times with some clients because of the recent volatility and the downturn that we've seen. A lot of clients have been offered sort of an early retirement package. So it's not exactly laid off, but it's kind of like, hey, we'd love for you to kind of go on. If you are someone who's entering into retirement probably more early than you were planning because of what's going on, then yeah, maybe you want to look at, how do I readjust my emergency reserves? Instead of only having 3 to 6 months, maybe I want to find a way to get to 12 to 18 months and perhaps adjust the risk in the portfolio a little bit.
Well, and I wanted to kind of just add another facet in there, because I think that a lot of people underestimate what they actually have access to, Bo, because they hear, because we put out there the 3 to 6 months. That's one part of it. But then when I have like nervous clients call us, I always remind them, I say, it's not just your 3 to 6 months of cash reserves, especially because that's a left field type thing. When you lose your job, yes, you have 3 to 6 months, but probably it starts playing mental tricks on you where it impacts your behavioral. Remember, you also can look at how much fixed income you have, because more than likely your fixed income has had slight volatility, but not really. It's pretty stable. So you can actually look at your monthly expense rate, compare that to your not only your cash reserves, but your fixed income holdings. See if that gives you a big enough bridge, it gives you peace of mind. And then here's another one. A lot of people are on accelerating their mortgage debt. If you're one of these people, I was in a position that I was sending extras, thousands of dollars a month, because I had this plan. I wanted to have all my mortgage debt gone in the next 5 years.
Yep.
Market has gotten beaten up. I've turned more opportunistic, or in this case, it's not opportunistic. It's just like, where's cash flow going to be saved to bridge my gap? If you've been prepaying mortgages, go back to paying minimum payments, because that will also create some extra margin of flex that you'll have in your cash flow. So take those into account. But it is definitely, when you lose your job, it's a recalibration moment.
100%.
And this is a little add-on to it. Market has actually had a pretty good, it's not a full recovery, but it has definitely come up for air, essentially. I mean, because there's a struggle in the economy. Think of a person that's drowning. It's struggling. It's underwater. You're like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. They've come up for air. Maybe a piece of driftwood floated by. This is the time that if you realize you overreacted and maybe you were way out above your skis on risk, this is a time to kind of take inventory of what you've got going on in your financial life and seeing if you were doing it right in the first place. Make the adjustments, because we're not sure. Nobody knows, are we in full recovery mode from here because we're going to get unleashed in a few weeks?
Sure.
Or is this just the beginning and we've got 2 more acts to this play that we're in?
Yep.
So that's just something to think about.
It's great. This one is from Mr. Three Flyer. He says, what are the money guys' thoughts on Roth conversions during this time? Perhaps we ought to do a really quick education, Brian. What is a Roth conversion?
That's where you take any of your IRA assets. It can be a traditional IRA. It can be some of your retirement plans like a 401k, 403b. And that's all, the majority of that money, because you took a tax deduction when you made the contribution, it's considered pre-tax, tax-deferred assets. You're trying to figure out how you get those tax-deferred assets and turn them into tax-free Roth assets. The way you do that is you do what's called a Roth conversion. You basically tell our favorite taxing uncle, the IRS, and you say, look, I'm going to take this portion of my tax-deferred assets, go ahead and pay taxes in this tax year, and then now, voila, they're turned into tax-free growth assets.
That's exactly right. So when I hear this question, the thing that I immediately think of is whenever we look at Roth conversion strategies for clients, we kind of separate them into 2 different strategies. Yeah. One is sort of an annual tax-free Roth conversion strategy where you convert after-tax contributions that you've potentially made to an IRA. We've done a number of shows on that. And the other is exactly like what you talked about, where we're actually turning pre-tax assets into Roth conversion assets. Into Roth assets. Right now might be a great time to do that given all of the volatility. However, one word of caution. Whenever you start artificially increasing your income, you need to be aware of any unintended consequences that may arise, like causing more of your Social Security to become taxable, like missing out on some tax credits or tax opportunities available, crossing over Medicare surcharge levels. And you want to make sure that if you do a Roth conversion now, you have a really good idea of what your income is going to be for the rest of the year so that you can stay below those levels. So for a lot of our clients, as we're looking at this, we're doing partial conversions now for those clients, where normally we might wait till the end of the year. We're doing 70 to 80% of what we would do for the whole year now, so that at the end of the year we can clean it up a little bit if there are any unknown income things that come to light between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, and I'm just going to summarize kind of what you just shared in the fact that I think right now there's 2 things you need to be considering. Yes, this is an opportune time to look at it because you've got values that have been depressed a little bit. So you can hopefully do a conversion. Then when the market springs into full recovery mode, that's tax-free. You capture that tax-free. So you lowered your taxability, plus you got captured the tax-free growth. That's awesome, but it's the unintended consequences. Because you mentioned all the right ones: Social Security, Medicare premiums, but then there's also the Affordable Care Act, the subsidy that you might be qualifying. You mentioned the tax credits. So all that definitely comes into play. So here's the way I would ask you to look at it. Consider this like you're playing horseshoes. You're not trying to ring it. You're trying to just get it close because you don't want to, right now, make what is safe that you can do without screwing up all the unintended consequences while you can be opportunistic. But don't get too frothy with it, because you know the saying, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Don't go and screw yourself up because you try to get everything converted, and then you get to the end of the tax year, and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize my taxable income was going to be this high, and you just don't have a component to get it back at that point.
Okay, this is an interesting one, and I think this one, there's some stuff in here that's weaved in there that we're going to have to pause for a second and talk about just general investment philosophy, right? This is from Tam. She says, question, is this a bad time to sell low-performing mutual funds in an IRA to buy better-performing funds?
Right.
So immediately when I hear that, this is where my mind first goes. I know that successful investors generally like to buy low and sell high. But Tam, if I'm hearing you're saying, hey, I want to sell the bad performers, the ones that are low, and I want to go buy the ones that have performed well, the ones that are high. In my mind, that immediately screams to me, perhaps I don't want to sell the bad ones and go buy the ones that have done well, because then I'm getting it wrong. Instead of buying low, selling high, I'm selling low and buying high, which is not exactly what you want to be doing.
Well, and also we run into, because I've had this question, I've seen it pop up on YouTube quite a bit, is we talked about loss harvesting. We've talked about this concept with your taxable assets. You can have an asset that has gone down. You can sell it, lock in the loss, buy something else. It's also, so you're not sitting on the sidelines, you're not timing, you're just taking advantage of locking in the loss, because you can use that later for charitable purposes, also for paper gain, when you offset gains. There's a lot of benefits to that. But that doesn't work on retirement assets. There's no reason to do loss harvesting on retirement assets. So I think it's really more of taking an assessment of what is, because there is something you don't want to throw good dollars on top of bad dollars. Because if you were in, like Bo, you keep a few holdings that you know are dogs, just as a reminder of never, ever, ever am I going to do individual holdings.
I bought some individual stocks in 2007 when I was just certain that I was smarter than every other investor
But there's
out
small
there.
portion.
We're talking about hundreds of dollars, like tiny, tiny.
But this is the time. Even if it's in a retirement account that you're not going to get a tax benefit, I think it is a time to look at legacy holdings, figure out what you want to be the portfolio. What you're trying to do, guys, here's the big thing you need to train your mind to. What is my permanent portfolio that if I don't have access to look at the stock market next week, next month, next year, for the next 5 years, I don't care because I feel so strongly about this investment. I don't need to look at it for the next 5 years to know that this is where I need to be. Then I think it's okay to sell, to buy something that you feel completely comfortable with. Because it does. We started the show talking about our favorite, Warren Buffett. Warren has made the analogy in so many different ways, but I think the most recent one was he mentioned a family member's farm and how he had a crazy farmer yelling out prices every day. And, sometimes you take him up on the offer and you buy some of his farm. Some days you think his offer is so high you offer to sell him your farm. But at the end of the day, it's still your farm that you love, you care about, and you think it's good for the long term. Think about your portfolio and your investments the same way.
Love it. I would agree completely with that. Great question, Tam. This one's from Brandon. Okay, I don't understand the first part, but it's still a great question. Are term life insurance policies going to increase a lot?
It means the term's over.
Are they going to increase? I think he means the cost. And I'll tell you why. He says, should I wait until I get a house to get life insurance? My wife and I have no kids yet. So I think this is the crux of his question. Hey, seems like I've heard that life insurance rates are really down right now, historically. Okay. Should I go ahead and buy life insurance now? I don't have a house yet. I'm just married. We don't have any kids. Or should I wait until I have more of, I'm going to say, an insurable interest?
I'll take the first part and let you kind of add on the second part. Here's a dirty little secret about the insurance industry, because it is true. It's not really a dirty secret. It's just kind of a natural thing, which I think is good news, is that insurance salespeople have for a year been able to say this is the best time in history to buy life insurance because rates are even lower than they were here.
Yep.
Here's something that they're tapping into. Now, I know this could be debatable, but with medical advances, we're all living longer. So if you are one of these people that thinks, yes, we will continue to have medical advances, life expectancies probably will be increased over the long term, this is just another day on the calendar as we walk towards more developments, meaning that term life insurance rates, the raw cost of insurance, very likely could get lower in the future. So that's the first part. When I hear somebody say, man, rates are at all times low right now. Now, there is an offset that. You're getting older while the rates are going down. So there is a balance there. You do need to pay attention to, and if especially, because why do you always see them advertise off of a 40-year-old? They all try to cut their rates so lean on 40-year-olds. That's probably any time under that, 40, really under 45, good time to be looking at life insurance for 20 and 30-year-olds that maybe have young children, or just got a mortgage. Great time. But there was more to the question I want to give you a chance to address.
And so I'm just going to kind of share with you my personal thoughts on this and the way that I've approached this, and I know the way that you've approached this, Brian. What generally happens with life insurance is as we age, as our circumstances change, our need for insurance also changes. And what most often happens is we end up stacking insurances. So I remember when I got my very first life insurance policy, it wasn't right after my wife and I got married, because I operated on the assumption my wife was working, I was working. She was beautiful. If I got hit by a bus, she was going to go remarry. She wasn't necessarily depending on my income. But once we bought our first house, had a big mortgage, and then once we moved out of state and I moved her away from her family, I said, okay, there's probably some insurable need there. So I went and bought my first life insurance policy. Well, then, as our financial circumstance changed, and we started having kids, as we started having more complexity, I would buy additional term life insurance policies. So now I have total insurance coverage, but I have a few different staggered policies. Because remember, those policies I bought in my mid-20s were really, really inexpensive. Now, they're going to run out in my mid-40s or mid-50s, depending on if it's a 20 or 30-year term. But then in my 30s, I bought more insurance. And I just kind of continued stacking it up to make sure that at all times I have a covered need. Well, as I continue to save and as I continue to move towards financial independence, eventually I'll get to the point to where I'm self-insured, right? So I'll have enough that if I did get hit by that proverbial bus, then my wife would be okay and my kids would be okay because of the savings that we've been doing. So as those early life insurance policies expire, it's okay for them to just fall off. And so my insurance, you kind of think about it like a stair step. It goes boom, 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 boom. And then as they start expiring, it goes boom, 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 until you're eventually self-insured. So if I was a young person approaching this, a really good rule of thumb is you want about 10 times your annual income. As your annual income increases, you just increase your insurance coverage every few years.
Yeah, and I think that you just nailed everything you possibly could do, especially as your kids, you're adding it on there. And it's okay to let it go, too, at the end of the term. Now, I will tell you, because we have very successful clients that come to us, they say, I don't really need the insurance anymore. Do I keep paying the premiums on this? My kind of something I always share with people is if you've already been paying on a policy for 12 years, 15 years, and it's a 20-year term, I kind of keep paying because realize in the beginning, when you first start a 20-year term, you're overpaying slightly for the insurance. But by the time you get to year 17 or 18 of a 20-year term, you're way underpaying for the cost of insurance based upon your age. So it's one of those things, bang for the buck. I keep paying until the premium actually goes up. That's just a little inside baseball thing just because you're trying to figure out, I have this terminology I call the cost to fund ratio, meaning that bang for every dollar I spend is being used well. If I know the insurance is being way over subsidized, I figure, might as well keep it hanging around a little bit longer. But feel okay with it going away because remember, the goal is that by the time these terms expire, exactly walking down the hill like Bo said, you don't need it anymore. You've done such a good job. You use that savings by doing low-cost term that you are actually investing the difference so that you do have an army of dollar bills that will represent you for the rest of your life and serve you well and even leave a legacy for your kids.
Great. This next question, this is from Royal Regulus. And this is a really good one, and I think it's so timely right now. if my employer quit their 401k matching during this time, and we've seen a lot of that. We've actually had a lot of our clients sending us letters from
and the
HR
plan
doing
administrators are being very proactive, letting employers know, hey, if you're struggling,
that. You can.
here's your options with your retirement plan.
So if my employer quit their 401k matching this time, would you recommend I increase my own input, stay the same, or find something else to invest in for the short term?
Man, this is, and we keep coming back to it. This is why I know we have gold with it in the long term, and you guys continue to use it as a resource. Respect the food, the financial order of operations. It's because we talk about this when we do these shows and we do this content. We talk about because it's not uncommon that you will have a 401k that is spectacular because of the employer match. Mm-hmm. If you strip out the employer match, you go, ooh, that's got some stinker investments in it. It was great when you were making a guaranteed 100% rate of return because of the employer match. But now that we've stripped that out of it, this is a fund that has a bunch of things that have managers, have high costs, just not a lot of diversification options. If that's the case with your plan, then yes, it might make sense to go back, refer to the financial order of operations, and maybe you should go on your own with like a Roth IRA funding with a low-cost provider like a Fidelity, Vanguard. Go do your research. But that type of stuff then comes into play. But don't just all of a sudden throw it out just because they quit doing the match. You kind of have to do an assessment because a lot of you guys, if you work for Fortune 500 companies, you might be in a low-cost Fidelity or Vanguard 401k or 403b that gives you creditor protection, some cool planning opportunities. If you retire like when you're 55, you know you have easier access to retirement assets, or a 457. I mean, they don't even have the early withdrawal provisions in there for especially all the people serving in the military. You know, there's all kind of opportunities. So you have to kind of, I hate answering a question with a question, but I have to tell our viewers, there's an audience that there's a lot of variables going into play with that question.
Yeah, and the only last thing that I'll just tag on the very end of that is the very end of your question. You said, should I pause that and invest in something for the short term? I think you meant for the short term until the employer match starts back up.
Yeah.
Because even if you decide to decrease your 401k contribution because there's no match, that money's still meant for retirement. So whatever you end up doing with that money ought to be for retirement, whether that be inside of a health savings account, inside of a Roth IRA, inside of a taxable brokerage account. It should still be long-term money. I would not arrive at the conclusion, hey, my employer stopped matching, I'm going to take that money and go, well, you're not going to go out anywhere because we're quarantined, but I'm going to start just ordering Uber Eats all the time or whatever the thing is you're doing. You want to make sure you're still putting that money out there for the future. Okay, yeah, that's good.
I do want to, because can I jump in with one PSA type thing, and then you can do your last question.
Okay.
Is that okay if I do a PSA?
Do you know what he's coming with? I have no idea what he's coming with.
I mentioned it. And look, it's
it makes me nervous. It makes me nervous when he calls audibles live on the air. Any of y'all get nervous with that? It makes me really uncomfortable. Well, I don't know where this is going.
I was hoping this question would come up, but it kind of didn't. So I feel like every now and then I have to kind of like put my elbow into.
Hey, don't you guys want to know the answer to this question?
Well, it's not even. But I think it's more of because the answer is a little squishy. Okay. So it's more of just making sure people get the answer they need, the resource.
Okay.
A lot of people have been asking me. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen it on YouTube. I'm sure it's out there on Facebook too. We've had people look. We're in weird times right now, and a lot of you guys have been very proactive in your planning. That you're maximizing your flexible spending accounts.
Yep.
You're also taking advantage of the flexible spending account for dependent care.
Yep.
Because just as a reminder, what you can do with these FSA accounts, medically, you can put money. Defer it. You get to take it out pre-Social Security, pre-Medicare. Your employer loves that too because you're saving, that 7.65. Your employer's saving the 7.65% because you're not paying the payroll taxes on it, and you get to spend that money. And think about the awesomeness of the fact that now with the CARES Act, you can actually even use that money for over-the-counter type stuff. But a lot of you guys have asked the question specifically about the dependent care. Your kids are no longer in daycare. They're at home with you. You are getting out now, Bo. You shared. I've talked to you, and you probably don't even recall talking about. All the providers around here are just charging, even though the kids are at home.
I was like, wait, they're like daycares out there that are like stopping their charging. They're sending money back to parents.
We live in a unique place that somehow that is okay. But and truthfully, it's okay if you can afford it. But it's one of those things where I know a lot of you guys are having questions. You're saying, look, I deferred the full $5,000 for dependent care. I'm not so sure I'm going to use all of that $5,000 because the kids are with me, and I don't know how long this is going to hang out. We're going to be on staying at the house. So here's my guidance on this. We did a little research, and there's a little confusion because I even had responded, I think, on Twitter that you're going to get a grace period for 2 to 3 months into the next year. Just make sure you use it there. Here's the only catch with that grace period. It's not assured. Matter of fact, I don't even think you can use it for the new tax year. That's a grace period to go file your expenses for the previous year. It's just a carryover period. So here's what you need to do. Fortunately, from my research, I found that the rules, the qualifying events, if you think about it, it's just like a retirement plan. If you change jobs or your spouse changes jobs, you get access to file for new health insurance, new retirement benefits. There's a good chance by doing some research on this, because of what's going on with this pandemic, a lot of your administrators, your employers, could call this a qualifying event to where it give you an intra-year adjustment to those withholdings on your flexible spending account, the dependent care. Check with your employer. If you're one of those people and you know a lot of your fellow coworkers are being impacted by this, I'd rather you be proactive and ask that question now because we're still in the month of April. Lots of year left to make these decisions and adjustments. But be proactive. That's one of those things I just want to put it out there.
So the takeaway is if you are curious about it, reach out to HR. Send an email, ask a question, make a phone call because there's a chance there might be an option that wasn't there previously.
Yeah, because realize all these flexible spending accounts with a little bit of grace on the medical side, if the plan elected to, they use it or lose it. And I think that scares people. You don't want to be funding these things, and then you get to the end of 2020 and you have all this leftover money, and you go, oopsie. So that's what. Be proactive, be your own advocate, talk to your employer in the HR department, and see if you have options.
That's awesome, guys. I think what's incredible. We've gone through this.
Did I just cost you a question?
I wouldn't say you cost me a question. I'd just say you just added some wonderful Money Guy information in there. Here's what I think is really, really wonderful, guys. This pandemic has taken place, and it's kind of put our entire lives on hold. But one thing that I think is just so wonderful is as we sit here right now, our counter is at 59,100. You folks have still been showing up, still been checking in with us. You're very active in the chat. You've been writing us. You've been going to the Money Guy website. You've been checking out our resource page, downloading the deliverables. You've been giving us your email address. You've been reaching out to the Abound website. It has been unbelievable. I think it's going to be incredible, Brian, if we can cross over 60,000 subscribers even through this pandemic, even through everything being shut down. Still, the good news of sound financial management is still growing, is still out there. You guys are sharing with your friends. You don't know how much that means to us because there are 10 million other things that you could be doing right now. Yet you choose to spend a little bit of time with us, and we just think that's incredible.
And I've shared with you guys. I mean, YouTube and others they demonetized all platforms that have attacked this, and I understand. I mean, approach this subject matter. I get that, and I'm okay with it. But I would challenge you guys because this has been a little bit of a setback. I wanted our show to be 100,000 subscribers by year end 2020. Yeah. So I need you guys to kind of, if you feel like you're getting value from this, I want the abundance cycle to not only work on us planting the seed, you working through, come, learn, apply, grow, reach that level of success to where you want to work with us professionally. But I'd also ask you, here's one more ask, tell your friends and family about us because we're trying to grow this platform. One of the things, you said it to me yesterday at lunch, Bo, you go, man, I love that we keep getting these comments where it says, man, you guys should be bigger than where you are. You guys are throwing out fire or other things you say. And that is true, but I want to encourage you, turn that into action. If you really feel like we should have a bigger audience, go tell some people about it because do not let this be the secret that lets you look smarter than all your other financial nerdy friends. Let this actually be something that y'all use as a conversation starter and a resource because that's what we want. I think there's so much noise out there. There's so much contrary to working for your back pocket that why not go push and pay it forward by sharing somebody who's really trying to help things grow and be successful. The abundance cycle doesn't have to stop with just Abound Wealth.
Exactly right.
So is that a good closing? Is that where we're bringing, or did you?
Well, if you have to ask if it was good.
No, I meant
you're just supposed to
I couldn't tell when I look at you. I couldn't. You're like, yeah, that was it. That was good. Money Got Team out. I didn't know if that or if you were like, and next here's this.
I was on the edge of my seat. I thought you nailed it.
Okay. Then with that, guys, thanks for tuning in to the live stream. But oh my God, we have blown it.
No, we haven't. Stay tuned. We got something exciting coming this week. Something real exciting.
I wanted to have a prop on set to kind of tease it.
We got something.
We didn't put a prop up. Oh, we had this huge prop. Now
follow. If you do not follow us on social media, if you're not on Twitter, if you're not on Facebook, if you're not on Instagram, you're going to want to go find us there because we have some pictures coming out today, tomorrow. We've got some pictures coming out this week that you guys are going to want to see. And I think that's a great tease. That's perfect.
All right. But how did I make it through this entire Q&A
right now, you're
show?
thinking about running out and going to get the prop, and
No,
you
we're
can't
not
do that
doing it.
live.
But I don't know how I'll let you guys. Of course, it probably would have taken the entire desk, and then I'd been poking out from up above it trying to do the show. It might not have worked. You guys, as a matter of fact, that's going to, let's just say there's props as well as costume changes coming your way. So tune in to the Friday show. You're not going to want to miss it. And, man, if you've ever wanted to see Bo in sequence, come back Friday. We will hook you up. Money Guy team, out.